Warning! Warning!
This video will contain spoilers. This is your only warning, so if you complain in the comments after this, I will not be held responsible. But some people will still hold me responsible because they just can't listen.
You and your stupid thoughtfulness can go to hell.
Detective Pikachu, the first live-action Pokemon movie that wasn't fan-made. In all honesty, I'm going to come out and say it, but I really like the film. But because I like something, that doesn't automatically mean that it's good. I think that's a bit easy to say. You can like something if it's bad, you can like something if it's good. And I'm going to admit this right now, I am really biased since I'm a huge fan of Pokemon, have been for a long time.
What a twist!
So it's essential that I tell you about that. If you are not familiar with the series, where the hell have you been for the last 2 decades in pop culture and video games? In any case, Detective Pikachu follows the adventures of Tim Goodman, seriously, and Detective Pikachu as they investigate the mystery behind Tim's father's disappearance/death. I do want to talk about the actors behind it, the first being with Tim Goodman, being played by Justice Smith, which I think is an odd choice since this guy has a Razzie Award nomination for Worst Supporting Actor. And while Tim in the actual game of Detective Pikachu wasn't the deepest character, if he was a puddle, if you stepped into him, you'd barely get wet. Tim in this movie actually does get a little bit of development in the film. It's nothing too out there, but to see a character go from disliking his father, focusing on his detective career while he was younger, to the point where his mother passed away and the father wasn't there, to actually see him actually develop as a character is actually pretty interesting to see. I know some people are going to complain that I glossed over the part of character development for the main character, but I'm just trying to be like the movie that just did the same thing. Get out of me. Now, Ryan Reynolds for Detective Pikachu, well, he doesn't get a lot of development either, but then again, he doesn't really need to. Also with the fact he's actually the best thing about the movie, which is good. While the 2 main characters really aren't all that deep, I'd be lying to say that the movie made the 2 interactions with each other very entertaining. It's pretty much the same old 2-man comedy duo, basically with the straight man, with Tim acting as a straight man of the 2, and Pikachu being the more comedic-based character. It's legit led to some funny moments in the film. And I do have to say, most of the Pokemon, well, they look really good. I mean, the obvious CG isn't all that enthralling, but it does what it's supposed to do, bring Pokemon to life. And honestly, the CG isn't as bad as you would expect. And in fact, as someone who enjoys CG mixed with live action on a regular basis, aka Tokusatsu, I can say in my own thoughts that I think it's good. Nothing was too nightmare fuelish. Well, save for Teeth, and Gyarados, and the Greninja, but I'll get to the Greninja later. I want to talk about the Aipom because that's actually a pretty weird looking scene because, yeah, they went from cute and cuddly to just plain old, oh, what am I looking at? Especially when they chased Tim through the apartment and for some reason kept taking his clothes off. And yes, you heard that right. There are a few scenes involving Pokemon in this movie that I do want to bring attention to as well. The first being when the group reaches the secret lab. In it, there are a number of jacked up Greninja, frog-based Pokemon, and when the reporter girl Lucy Stevens gets captured by one of them, the Greninja wrap her and her Psyduck with one of their tongues. And I got some flashback to some horror flicks in that scene, because there's a scene where Tim and Pikachu are looking for Lucy, but their attention gets drawn by a small drop of slime on the floor. It was almost like it was taken out of Alien, and it's extremely creepy, not helped by the fact that the Greninja take a lot of pages out of the Uncanny Valley, which is actually pretty awesome in that regard. Another Pokemon scene I loved? The scene with the Torterra and how it turns out they're a giant Torterra. I mean, it's a continent Pokemon after all, and it looks really awesome, and the action scene where the characters are trying to dodge falling rocks, jumping on trees, and just trying to survive is actually really creative and fun to watch. Bit of a different take to see what's happening. And one that was kind of memorable for me, and I'm pretty sure for a lot of other people, was the Mr. Mime scene.
Pipe, yes, okay, I can. Shoving, pushing. My problem is that I push people away and then hate them for leaving.
He's saying you can shove it.
What? I can shove it? Okay, that's it. No, we're switching roles.
A lot of people have seen what that part of it is in the trailer, but it doesn't do it justice for the actual scene, especially when the scene has a lot of comedy gold to it. It plays off Mr. Mime and a mime effect to a T, with added sound effects with a bit of a splash, if I may say. God, that's horrible. You know it's an interrogation scene, and since I already talked about spoilers, one of the best jokes is Tim threatening to burn Mr. Mime with imaginary gasoline and lining up an imaginary match, with Mr. Mime constantly putting it out. The added sound effects just really do well for it, and it just makes it so much more hilarious. The funniest part of that scene, though, is that even though Tim actually does get Mr. Mime to talk, he accidentally drops the imaginary match onto the imaginary gasoline, leading to Mr. Mime, and there's even a little sound effect coming out of it. I know it sounds morbid, but just really funny to watch, and there's no graphic imagery for it, so it's really funny to watch. I know it sounds morbid, but it's just a funny scene to watch, and there's no graphic imagery to actually downplay the comedy. Although I wouldn't say there aren't mature jokes thrown here and there are jokes that are innocent enough for kids in it, but there are also jokes that are more mature that would fly over the heads of the youth, as well as there being plenty of referential humor to it as well. Basically, if you don't know a lot about Pokemon, you're not going to get a lot of the jokes in this. Like one mythology gag that's a little nod to the Pokemon franchise is when Pikachu is trying to kick a Magikarp in order to get it to evolve, which is a scene from the original anime series, with James trying to do the same thing. There's also Pikachu singing the original Pokemon theme song, which is sad but oddly funny as well. There is charm to the film, and frankly, I can see Pokemon fans really enjoying it real easily. However, one aspect I do have to point out is the story and the characters. On one hand, it's a pretty basic story, not really something to write home about and stuff that you've come to expect in a Pokemon-based story. Nothing wrong with it, wouldn't say it's completely predictable, but then again, it's a Pokemon story. I'm not expecting them to get an award for it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have problems, like it's never really clearly explained how Tim could understand Pikachu. If I had to hazard a guess, that's something to do with psychic energy from Mewtwo, but I really wish they could have gone a bit further with it. The story itself does take a lot of elements from the Detective Pikachu game, like the main characters, some of the elements like the A-Pom and Substance R. Then they took the plot in a completely different direction from the original game. I have no idea why they decided to change the lead reporter girl to Lucy from Amelia. Just seems kinda like a weird change to me. Oh, and as a side note, all the neon in the city with all the Pokemon-esque designs for signs and such was such a treat to see and watch because it gave like this really good neo-noir feel to it. It's kind of like really awesome to look at, and the colors were just like really eye-catching. I know some people are going to say the plot is simple, but I'm going to retort by saying you don't go to see a movie about a talking animal that shoots lightning from its face and just so happens to be a detective and you're expecting something level-headed. It's no masterpiece for sure, but it certainly isn't what I'd call bad. I'd certainly recommend it to Pokemon fans. It's good, bad, captivating, funny, and bizarre all at the same time, and gives you like this really weird feeling inside your gut. It's doubtful that anyone who is listening to this who isn't a Pokemon fan will go into this becoming a new Pokemon fan. So if you're at least familiar with the series, I recommend the movie as a small little romp into what is probably the best video game adaptation thus far. Not better than Super Mario Brothers! Otherwise, if you're going to go into this and you're not a fan of the series, all I can say is go in it with an open mind and don't go to expect cinema gold. This is a film for the fans of the franchise, and that's both a good and bad thing for the film. In any case, these are just my impressions of the film. What are your guys' thoughts, and what do you think of the style review? Let me know in the comments below. I'm MangaKamen, and remember to examine your fandom. Thanks for watching. Also, as a side note, if they actually put this on DVD or Blu-ray, I would love to see like a DVD extra where you replace all the lines of Pikachu with Ryan Reynolds with Danny DeVito. That would be so awesome!